All right. As you know, we do these meetings as a webinar as well. So if you know anyone who couldn't make it today, or if this was just so good that you want to see it again, we will have it out on the web probably in about a week. Just look for Selco TV over at YouTube. You'll find those videos. They're also prominently featured on our website. And before we move on to the first presentation, we have a special announcement from Tyler Irvin.
Okay. So, as Ann mentioned, she will only be around for another 5 months at this point, which makes this her last Technology Users Group meeting that she'll be here for. So, in honor of that, went out last night to Best Buy and got a Lightning to HDMI converter for her.
Just a little memento of the users group.
Oh my goodness, yes. I just borrowed one from Mike Flores to go to Illinois.
He might have been the one to recommend it.
Yeah.
Thank you. Oh, this is tough, guys. I haven't hit those lasts of anything yet.
Yeah, we didn't warn Ann this was coming.
We're going to have to start buying you presents for our last meeting. Right?
Oh, no.
I said a Hank and Pearl's gift certificate.
There you go.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. For those of you who do not know, that's the knitting shop in town. So, oh, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Why do I need to stay for Horizon update? I'm like, I don't even have a username anymore. Okay, do good work. I have to go get online.
All right. All right, so moving right along, we'll start off with our latest favorite topic around here, which is 7.5.4. Okay.
Sorry. Ignore the manic smiles and stuff with staff.
Whoops.
A lot of eye rolls going on here?
All right.
Can't blame you.
So as you all know, we recently did an upgrade of Horizon to version 7.5.4. If this was a movie, it would be called the Agony and the Ecstasy. And that's going to be our theme today. And it would help if I had my notes ready to go. There we are. So we'll start with the Agony, and most of that is bugs. We did the upgrade on September 24th on a Saturday night. It went pretty well. Cersei Dynix performed the upgrades. There was a time we used to do those ourselves, but the company likes to do those now. And frankly, it works pretty well for us as well. So we're okay with that. They did the upgrade. Everything seemed to work. The system passed all of the normal post-upgrade checks that we run it through. But late in the day, the following day, Sunday, we got an email into the help desk from one of the libraries pointing out some odd anomalies. We didn't really get any calls, but we certainly looked at it. And by Monday morning, it was becoming clear that something was wrong. And the problem was multiple bugs in the software. We called Cersei Dynix, and they sent us a sheet of things you should know about 7.5.4. And that's kind of unusual. We've never had anything like that happen before. And looking at the sheet, we got really concerned because this was considerably more serious than just things we should know. There were three big primary bugs that were identified. First of all, anytime you actually marked a fine paid, the client would crash. Just a little thing. Fortunately, there was a workaround that Cersei Dynix already had, which was pretty easy to implement. Removing the borrower data from the fine receipts took care of that, the printed receipts. So that was something we were able to do, and that took care of that problem at the cost of degrading the value of the receipts just a little bit. The second problem was that scanning items that were on hold displayed the wrong borrower name. So you'd have something, you'd check it in, and the name would pop up on hold for so-and-so was the wrong person. That's more serious, but at least we were able to console ourselves with the knowledge that it was just a display problem. Behind the scenes, Horizon knew who the correct patron was. The hold notice was generated for the correct patron. Everything was okay behind the scenes. It was just a display bug that was causing that misleading information to come up. So not super great, but at least we don't have hold notices going out to the wrong people. There was no workaround for that. Sites that do not print hold slips were much worse affected by that problem, because for sites that do print hold slips, the information was still correct. So we got that information out right away on Monday. The third problem actually is a direct follow-up to the second, which is scanning an item on hold twice would send it back to the owning library, which is not how the system is supposed to work. When you scan that item a second time, it should just reiterate, items on the hold shelf, leave me there, don't do anything. But instead it would send it back to the owning library. This really dovetailed in a nasty way with the second problem, because failing to get an accurate display of who the item was on hold for, many libraries would just instinctively hit it again. And now you've screwed up your hold. It was not made clear to us right away. We never actually heard this from Cersei Dynex, but we found out on our own that that second click, that second check-in, also was creating database integrity problems, which started to become clear to us over the next couple of days. Fortunately, they were not hard for us to resolve when they came up. It just became one more thing that we had to watch for. Throughout that week, we had to keep checking the database for integrity problems. So the whole thing was really pretty nasty. We passed along information on all these problems as we got it. Cersei Dynex did come up with a workaround for that third issue with the extra check-in. We had independently developed a workaround of our own. We posted both. And then at that point, there was not much to do except wait to find out when the problems would be fixed. On Thursday of that week, September 29th, Cersei Dynex installed a patch that resolved all of those major issues. There were still a few little ripply things happening, and we're still seeing a few little anomalies in the system, but it did fix most of the major problems. So in subsequent discussion, which is a nice way of saying I called him and said, "What the hell?" We found out that we had upgraded on Saturday. Development had found these problems either on late Thursday or early Friday morning, and they had issued a stop on upgrades. But in any large organization, there's always somebody that doesn't get the word. This time it happened to be our upgrade team, who didn't get the word and proceeded with the upgrade on Saturday night as originally planned. So I wish I could say that I banged my fist and screamed at them and all of that, but honestly, it's happened to all of us. There's always someone that doesn't get the memo. This time it just hit us. So we did yell a little bit, but in the end there was not much to be done. So we actually do have some unreleased footage of our meetings with Cersei Dynex over this. From the movie, if you haven't seen it, I recommend you do. It's really good. And this is the feeling that you get when development issues a stop on upgrades and your upgrade team doesn't get the word and upgrades you anyway. But don't worry, they're working on a patch. And I wish that was the end of the agony, but unfortunately it's not. There is one enhancement that they added to the system, which has turned out to be anything but an enhancement for us. There is an option to cancel trapping a hold. When you check an item in that is on hold, there is a little cancel button on the pop-up window. And it looks like you can hit it and cancel the hold. Like, okay, I don't want to use this item for this hold. Let's use a different item for that. From reading the release notes, Cheryl and I both have been unable to figure out exactly what they want this button to do. It's very muddled and unclear. Whatever they were trying to accomplish, it's not working, because what's actually happening is it sends the item back to its owning library, but that item is still bound to the request. So as soon as the owning library checks it in, when it arrives in delivery, it goes right back. Our theory is that they were trying to alleviate the situation where maybe they've got an item actually right there that they want to use, or they think it's going to be on somebody else's pull list and it's not. We're not really sure. We called them about it and they said, oh yeah, that's not right, is it? So I don't know what they were trying to do. I've been watching Cersei Dynix for many years. I suspect they were probably trying to solve a very specific problem at some customer site and inadvertently broke it for the rest of us, but that's just speculation on my part. All right, let's get to some Ecstasy, because there is actually a lot of really good stuff here. And unfortunately, I've only allowed myself 5 minutes to talk about this because I had to talk about all the problems. And that's really kind of a disservice because there is some really cool stuff in this upgrade. So I'm going to get through this real quick, but rest assured, more information on all of this will be coming out. There is a new enhancement for pre-filling the fine payment window. It clears the fine payment field, which forces you to put in the amount of the fine being paid by a patron, which on first blush sounds like more work. But it solves the problem of inadvertent payments for the entire fine, which is a common problem here within the region. We've heard about it a lot. I didn't mean to pay the whole fine. The patron only wanted to pay part of it, but I didn't change the little window. It must be a problem at other sites because Cersei Dynix has now blanked that, and you will have to actually fill that in, which will hopefully cut back on the instance of inadvertent payments. That is a location-specific feature, so we can turn it on or off for each library depending on their preference, and we are going to do that. We are not doing it today, but in the next few weeks when we are ready to, we will send out some communication to you asking each of you to let us know if you want that feature turned on or not. So if you don't feel this is a problem for you and you don't like the idea of having to type in an amount every time, we'll just leave it off. But if you think this would be helpful, we can turn it on. The borrower release document is a little menu feature now that will cause Horizon to print out a short document saying, this patron record, you got to pick the patron first, this borrower is free of all obligations to the library. This is something that we've been asked for from schools who may have that as part of their process when a student is graduating and they want to get their diploma or they want to get their grades or something else. They need to have some letter from the library saying no fines, no lost items, no obligations. So instead of making you do that manually, there is now an option in Horizon that will just spit out a nice little pre-generated notice. There are probably some scenarios where this might be useful for publics as well, but we do think it's probably more useful for schools. For some reason that is not clear, we have to actually call Cersei Dynix to enable this. It's not actually turned on. It doesn't seem like it's that major of a feature that it should require that treatment, but for some reason it does. So we will be getting that set up in the next week or two. For those of you who don't want to use it, it's just a menu item. Just don't click that one. For those of you who do want to use it, it will be there. Hide blocks window at CKI, and I expect to hear some cheers on this one. As you may recall, when you're checking items in, there was a show borrower checkbox. And when you would have that clicked, it would show the borrower for each item as you checked it in. A couple of releases ago, it would also show any blocks for that borrower. It showed them in a separate window, which would steal focus away from the client. Cersei Dynix saw that as a bug, and in 7.5.3, the last version, they fixed it. And then lo and behold, we started hearing from libraries who actually kind of liked that and felt that that was more of a feature than a bug and actually found it a useful part of their workflow. And it must not just have been us because Cersei Dynix has now changed it in this version so that that feature is now actually back. And they're going to call it a feature and not a bug anymore. But for those of you who don't like using that because it gets in the way of your check-ins, there is a new checkbox that will allow you to hide those blocks. So for those of you who found that useful and called us about it, you got it back. Lost processing fee refund. This allows each individual library to automatically waive the lost processing fee whenever a lost item is checked back in. This is one that we've heard about from some of you. So And again, it must not just have been us because Cersei Dynex has put it into this version. This is also location specific. We will let each library to decide if they want to use that or not. In a week or so, we'll probably be sending out some communication to you asking you to let us know if you want that. Mailing address. This adds a new address field in the borrower record. You may have seen it already. It just creates a new address, this one for mailing. So now notices will go to that address if it's filled in, rather than the residential address. So this will be useful for patrons that have P.O. boxes and don't want mail coming to their houses. So hopefully that's something that's useful. Preferred ID. If you go to a bank website or a credit card website or really any customer service website, often you'll be given the ability to create a little username for yourself so you don't always have to key in your account number. So like for me, it's usually DRL7067 or something like that. Cersei Dynex has now put in the ability for patrons to do that when they're logging into Enterprise. So instead of having to put in their library barcode number, they can now create a username for themselves. And it can be whatever they want, including their email address, which is a common practice. I think this is going to be a big step forward in usability, and certainly will make her Enterprise look a little better compared to other customer service websites. Now, there are some downsides. We will not be able to see what that preferred ID is. Patrons can create it through Enterprise. Library staff can create it in the client if a patron asks you to. But if the patron comes back and says, I forgot my preferred ID, none of us, neither us nor you, are going to be able to look that up and tell them what it is because it is encrypted. Now that's actually a good thing. I wish they would encrypt more patron information in Horizon. But this is a good sign that maybe they're starting to think in those terms now. And if a patron were to ask you about that, I would simply say, that makes it harder for hackers to get the information if we were ever compromised. You can create a new one for the borrower, or they can create a new one, but you can't go back and see what it was. So just a little wrinkle.
The
Yeah.
preferred ID is replacing their barcode?
Kathy asked if the preferred ID is replacing their barcode. It's not a replacement. You can still use your barcode number. You could also just use this feature instead if you wanted to have something that was a little more human rememberable.
Okay.
This is not live yet. While it's live in Horizon, we have to do an Enterprise upgrade and possibly a web services upgrade before the feature goes up. So we'll be sending more information to you on that. Those upgrades are just now starting to come out, so we haven't really had a chance to look at them yet. But I would hope that this will be live sometime in the next 6 months or so, probably. Yeah, Susan?
Does this affect Pharaoh's sign up?
No, it does not. Susan asked if this affects Pharos. The preferred ID will not work for third-party software that's authenticating against Horizon. So that was a good question. So Pharos, ebook services, other services such as, I'm suddenly drawing a blank here. Online databases, thank you. Those you will still have to have a barcode number. Cersei Dynex has said they will see what they can do about that in the future, but they're going to have cooperation from those other vendors in order to make that happen. Yeah.
Do they have to be unique?
I'm sorry?
Do they have to be unique?
Question is, do they have to be unique? No, Cersei Dynex is not, Horizon's not checking them against anything else. And I don't believe they have to be unique to each patron. Anything else? I may be wrong about that though, so that's something we need to check out. Let me check on that and get back to you, because actually now I think about it, I don't think that makes any sense. So that's not something we have found out yet. Okay. And finally, deduping borrower records. Those of you who work with the bibliographic database, I'm sure know what deduping means. This feature will check whenever you save a borrower record to see if there might be another record for that borrower already in the system. And if so, it will flag you to let you know that you might be creating a new record for someone who already has one. This is a feature we've had in bibliographic databases for a long time, and it's kind of exciting to see this coming to the patron database. Now, some caveats. The way it works is it matches fields. So we've been given a list of fields that can be used to check, and it includes the ones that you would probably expect, like name, address, some of those. We will have to select how many of those fields have to match before the flag is thrown, and also which fields have to match. And that's a decision we have not made yet because we are still testing this feature to kind of see how it works. We will have the ability to have a different set of criteria for schools and for publics. So that's good news. But I am going to warn you, data entry is the key point here. It has to match exactly, or the system is not going to catch it. So for example, if you have a borrower record for Bob Ford, it's not going to catch a record for Robert Ford. The system is going to see those as two completely separate ones and is not going to flag them unless it has enough other hits that we have put in there. Fifth Street with street in lowercase and a period will not match Fifth Street where street is capitalized. Differences in punctuation and things like that from one library to another will throw this off. So it's a neat feature. We're excited about it. There are some caveats though, so I just want to manage everyone's expectations just a little bit on that. This is probably getting ahead of ourselves, but if this feature works as advertised and we think it's valuable, it may be time to sit down with the ILS Operations and Technology Policy Joint Committee and talk about more rigorous data entry standards for borrower records. Because I have a feeling we're going to run into some problems with that.
I would
Yep.
suggest birthdays, that's a really good way to match.
Yep, the suggestion is made to use birthdays, and I think that's a good one as well. And I do believe that's on the list of possibilities.
Yeah, it is, but not everyone enters birthdays.
Yeah. So, and that's a good point. Cheryl mentioned that not everyone enters birthdays in the borrower records. So just like data entry matters, blank fields also matter. If you don't use that, the feature's not going to work for you. And that's why we're kind of excited that we can have different criteria for school libraries as opposed to publics, since the data entry for those two types of institutions are very different. So there's not going to have to be a one-size-fits-all. So we're kind of excited about that. So as I mentioned, we're not quite ready to implement any of these other than mailing address, which is already there and nothing had to be done for that. So if you go into the patron record, you will find mailing address and you can start populating that. For the others, we are still investigating them. Frankly, we're still dealing with all the various bugs and problems that came up that we haven't had a chance to really get into any of these enhancements yet. But we're excited about doing so, and we'll be sending out more communications as we turn them on and as we need your input on which ones are going to be turned on for which libraries. So there's been some agony, but there's some ecstasy coming. And while I don't think Horizon is ever going to quite be an on par accomplishment as the Sistine Chapel, we are working on getting there. Any questions? Yes?
On the loss processing fee refund, that's not a credit on their account. It's just
No.
taking the processing fee off.
The question was, is the loss processing fee a credit? No, it is not. It's only if you have charged that patron a loss processing fee and now they have brought the item back, that fee would get waived. Okay. And unfortunately, we're going to have to be done.
Can I just
Yeah,
say
Cheryl.
one thing? If Selco does your notices, do not use the mailing address, because I have to adjust our scripts that we send to UMS ahead of time.
So Cheryl's making
But don't use that.
So Cheryl's making the point that if we are running your print notices for you, don't use mailing address just yet because we need to work with our vendor to update the scripts. And as soon as we get that done, we will get information out to you. Okay. Trying to get back to the agenda. There it is. All right. Thanks a lot.